Hello, early birds.
Namaste, Brother Shankara.
Namaste.
Hari Om, Brother Shankara.
Hari Om, Naveen. Namaste to you and Swam.
How are you?
Quite well, dear. How are you?
Good, good. We are doing good. We are doing good.
Hello, Brahmadas.
Hello, Brother Shankara.
Good evening, everybody.
Well,
Good
good evening,
evening.
Tim
Good evening.
Garbine. A great good evening to you.
Yes, sir.
Is that Nira? Who is that just appeared?
Keith.
Oh, Keith. Sorry. My vision is not that great, Keith.
No worries. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Namaste.
Namaste.
You can see we have heavy storms here in Roswell. How's the weather down there in Tucker?
We had some storms earlier, some, not really storms, some rain, but it's now not raining here. So if it's moving this direction, we'll probably get some of what you're experiencing a bit further on.
I'm in Midtown. It's pouring down.
Okay. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavid Vishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So good evening, everyone, welcome to our class on Bhagavad Gita. If you recall, we're in chapter 4, Renunciation Through Knowledge. And Krishna has just gone through one of his catalogs of the various kinds of renunciation and how they achieve their ends. And he sums up by saying, all these understand the meaning of sacrificial worship. Through worship, their sins are consumed away. Now, I'd just like to note again that this is one of those promises that we can slide by and not pay enough attention to. Through worship, their sins are consumed away. That is to say, their karmas are rendered harmless. As Holy Mother said, it will be stricken. They will be stricken from the book of record. So, through worship, their sins are consumed away. Why is this important? Well, first of all, it minimizes our suffering. But secondly, it's our karmas that, being persistent, drag us to reincarnation. That's what we're told. So through worship, their sins are consumed away. They eat the food which has been blessed in the sacrifice. Thus they obtain immortality. In other words, no more rebirth, and reach eternal Brahman. Now, when Krishna says they eat the food which has been blessed in the sacrifice, food here means the entirety of human experience, the sense of what we experience through the senses. It's just like when Sri Ramakrishna said here in the Kali Yuga, we are so dependent on food. By that, he didn't mean just the food we put in our mouths, but we're dependent on sensual stimulation. And if you've ever been at a stoplight and one of those cars drives up near you that is just booming away, you can hear everything that is going on in that car, the so-called music going on in that car. You'll see what it is that that results in the extreme. So they eat the food which has been blessed in the sacrifice. Thus they obtain immortality and reach eternal Brahman. He who does not worship God cannot be happy even in this world. What then can he expect from any other? So Krishna's gesturing toward this doing sacrifices for the purpose of attaining heaven. If you're not happy in this world, what can you expect from heaven? Yes, things will be more intense in heaven. But it doesn't mean that there is no dukkha, there is no suffering. And then he, again, summarizing, going back over the idea of the catalog that he just went through. All these and many other forms of worship are prescribed by the scriptures. All of them involve the doing of some kind of action. When you fully understand this, you will be made free in Brahman. All of them involve doing some kind of action. When you fully understand this, you will be made free in Brahman. What is he gesturing toward? We learn by doing. All of them involve the doing of some kind of action. We don't learn by reading. We learn what we should learn by reading or listening. But it doesn't make the deep difference in us. So all of them involve the doing of some kind of action. When you fully understand this, in other words, when you're able to actually do the actions, you will be made free in Brahman. The form of worship which consists in contemplating Brahman is superior to ritualistic worship with material offerings. So various forms of meditation, contemplation, concentration, and meditation, he's saying, are superior to ritualistic worship. Ritualistic worship will help you concentrate your mind to a degree, but it will not take you deep inside. You will not find, as Sri Ramakrishna said, the gem of love. The reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment. Once again, pointing toward action as the way to enlightenment. Those illumined souls who have realized the truth will instruct you in the knowledge of Brahman if you will prostrate yourself before them, question them, and serve them as a disciple. Now, Swami Prabhavananda amplified on this, and serve them as a disciple. That doesn't mean you have to live with them and take care of their physical needs. Anything you can do in that regard is regarded as auspicious, of course. But what Swami Prabhavananda said this means is that you follow their instructions. They'll instruct you, and to serve them as a disciple is to follow their instructions. And notice how Krishna speaks about this business of attaining enlightenment. He doesn't say if, he said when you have reached enlightenment. In other words, if you do these things, it will happen. When you have reached enlightenment, ignorance will delude you no longer. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation within your own Atman and in me. And this is the testimony of saint after saint after saint. You will see the entire creation within yourself and the Atman, the soul, and in me, Ishvara or Ishwari. If you read the testimony of the saints, you will find that this is their experience. I'm going to read that again. It's such a huge promise. When you have reached enlightenment, ignorance will delude you no longer. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation within your own Atman and in me. And though you were the foulest of sinners, this knowledge alone would carry you like a raft over all your sin. This is just one of the many places in the Gita that Krishna says, don't worry about your past. Take up the instructions that he has given us, given you, given us, without reservation. Do them with perseverance and patience. Though you were the foulest of sinners, this knowledge alone would carry you like a raft over all your sin. The blazing fire burns wood to ashes. The fire of knowledge turns all karmas to ashes. And there it is in so many words. Your karmas are simply burnt away. Destiny herself strikes them from the book of record, is the way Mother puts it. On earth, there is no purifier as great as this knowledge. When a man is made perfect in yoga, and let's remember that yoga means two things. It means union with the highest, the higher, 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 and then the highest. And it means detachment. Detachment from the lower, 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 until you are no longer attracted to or participate in the lower. On earth, there is no purifier as great as this knowledge. When a man is made perfect in yoga, he knows its truth within his heart. The man of faith, whose heart is devoted, whose senses are mastered, he finds Brahman. So notice there's nothing conditional about this. If you have faith, if your heart is devoted, if you've mastered your senses, you will find Brahman. Enlightened, he passes at once to the highest, the peace beyond passion, which is exactly the same peace that Christ was speaking of when he said, the peace that passeth all understanding. There's no way to talk about it or think about it. It's simply a way of being. You abide in that peace. The ignorant, the faithless, the doubter goes to his destruction. How shall he enjoy this world or the next, or any happiness? When a man can act without desire through practice of yoga, when his doubts are torn to shreds because he knows Brahman, when his heart is
Poised.
I'm sorry, it's doing that thing of going backwards. When his heart is poised in the beginning of, in the being of the Atman, when his heart is poised in the being of the Atman, no bonds can bind him. Those of you who mentioned it was pouring rain at your place when we started, it's now pouring rain here. And then Krishna says, with his super sensuous vision, he says to Arjuna, "Still I can see it, a doubt that lingers deep in your heart, brought forth by delusion. You doubt the truth of the living Atman." So he says to Arjuna, who is every person, the person who speaks for us, you doubt the truth of the living Atman. Where is your sword, discrimination? Draw it and slash delusion to pieces. Then arise, O son of Bharata. Now Krishna is speaking to all of us here. Where is your sword, discrimination? Draw it and slash delusion to pieces. That lingering feeling in us, can I really do this? Is this really for me? Maybe he doesn't quite mean it when he says, you know, if you're a sinner, I've been such a sinner, all those kinds of thoughts come to us. We just have to banish them. We have to see them, recognize them for what they are, and say, I am not, you have to be dauntless and say, I am not going to allow you to hold me back. Draw that sort of discrimination, slash delusion to pieces. Then rise, O son of Bharata. Take your stand. I'm sorry, this just drives me. Take your stand in karma yoga. So that's the end of that chapter. And we're about to go into chapter 5, the yoga of renunciation. So that's a good place to stop and see if there are any questions or concerns. We did this last night and it worked well. That rather than go on without resolving any concerns or questions or any comments that you wish to make, this is our studying together, the art of spirituality. So please, anything you have to say, please say it.
Hello, Brother Shankara.
Speak up, please.
Hello, Brother Shankara. So without doubt, when someone is enlightened, is there no going back?
I'm sorry, Aaron, would you say that again and be a little more explicit about what the question you're asking?
Well, we're talking about yoga and breaking free, and I was wondering, once a soul is enlightened, is there no going back from?
There is no going back. Now, Is there a period where there is the opportunity to go back? Yes, Adi Shankaracharya, when you first experience samadhi, you can still, as Krishna says, the senses are so strong that you can still be derailed. And he talks about it later with Arjuna. Arjuna asks the question, what happens if I slip away from the path of yoga? Won't I be lost in this world and the next? And Krishna says, oh no, my son. This is one of the few places where he addresses him in that way, my son. Oh no, my son, nothing is ever lost. You will lose this body and take another one. But you in that you will be in very auspicious circumstances to go forward. But once you're established, well established in samadhi, that where you've really, where it is habitual to you to think and act in accord with the highest teachings and the highest way of being, then there's no going back. But there is, it's described very, very nicely in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. All of the Yoga Sutra, in the powers section, all of the attractions, that all of the temptations that can come to you when you become quite adept and have great control over your senses and your over your psyche. There's a very brief story about this in the Gospels about Christ and the temptations. There's a somewhat longer story in the story of Siddhartha becoming the Buddha and how he's tempted. So Mahamaya is not called Mahamaya for nothing. It is very powerful and compelling. So there is a period where you can still turn aside. But once you're truly established, then there's no going back. Simply because there's nothing to go back to. You've seen through it all. As Adi Shankaracharya said, his mind had become dissolved. His mind fell like a hailstone into the ocean of knowledge and therein dissolved. And so there was no longer any of this kind of mind that we possess to be stimulated by desire, by restlessness. Peace, eternal peace, the peace that passeth all understanding. Very good question. And it's the same one that Arjuna asks a bit later on. You just asked it differently. Very good. Anyone else?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Swam.
The reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment. If one were to equate action with karma or karma as action, then would the practice of Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga also be sort of like a karma yoga because we are actually doing something?
Well, it's all action. Karma yoga is a specific kind of action. If you remember that in chapter 3, and this is what will be talked about this coming Sunday. If you want to hear more about it in detail, the Krishna prescribes specific actions that he defines as karma yoga. But this that he just said, all of this renunciation through knowledge are forms of that. Various forms of worship and sacrifice. So there, as he says, there are all of these and many more. And in chapter 5, we'll find that he'll actually say, whatever you do, if it's sincere and centered on attaining the knowledge of God, he said, I'll get behind it and make it happen for you. He says that. So we can worry too much about the details. This is why we have, those of us who are drawn to have gurus, this is why we have gurus. So that for the first period of our sadhana, serious sadhana, we have specific instructions. Do this, do this, do this. And so if we sincerely follow those and practice them, this is what Krishna meant by serve your guru as a disciple. If we truly follow those instructions, and it may take you years to where you are adeptly following those instructions. Well and good. Years are nothing in the big picture. I mean, years of our, as Sri Ramakrishna said, a human life is of only 2 days' duration. He was trying to give us a sense of how brief human life is. So it's best not to fret too much about the details. Do what your teacher has told you to do and see what the fruits of that are over 2-3 years. And Swami Brahmananda promises, and he speaks for all of the gurus, all of the apostolic lineage. If you do that, if you do it for 2 or 3 years, you will achieve results. And he says, if you don't, then you can come back and slap me in the face. That's what Brahmananda says. Good question. It is inevitably, it comes up in our minds. All these actions, there's all this forest of different things to do and ways to think and so on. This is why we have the instruction of a teacher. We've prostrated ourselves before that teacher and said, give me instruction. They do, and then you serve them as a disciple by following those instructions as best you can. Anyone else? Okay. We've got plenty of time left, so we'll take up chapter 5, the yoga of renunciation. And Arjuna always, he asks these very pertinent questions. You speak so highly of the renunciation of action, yet you ask me to follow the yoga of action. Now tell me, definitely, which of these is better? He says, renounce action, but then he tells you, follow the yoga of action. Which is better? Sri Krishna, action rightly renounced brings freedom. Action rightly performed brings freedom. Both are better than the mere shunning of action. When a man lacks lust and hatred, his renunciation does not waver. Now, notice, he's talking about the Rajoguna. When you have mastered the Rajoguna, when a man lacks lust and hatred, his renunciation does not waver. It is that guna of projection that causes us the most trouble. So when you have mastered that tendency to lust after things, and it doesn't just mean, the lust of physical love. It means all of that, what Chaitanya refers to as that forest fire of worldly lust raging furiously within. When a man lacks lust and hatred, his renunciation does not waver. He neither longs, he no longer longs for things, nor loathes its opposite. The chains of his delusion are soon cast off. Did I go too many pages? He neither longs for one thing, nor loathes its opposite. The chains of his delusion are soon cast off. So he's pointing specifically at the Rajoguna. The yoga of action, say the ignorant, is different from the knowledge of Brahman. He says, this is the ignorant point of view. The wise see knowledge and action as one. They see truly. Take either path, renunciation of action or right action, take either path and tread it to the end. The end is the same. Now, being mindful of the fact that Krishna says you can't renounce all action. The very act of blinking your eyes is action, breathing is action, thinking is action. So it's a matter of purifying those actions. Take either path and tread it to the end. The end is the same. There the followers of action meet the seekers after knowledge in equal freedom. It is hard to renounce action without following the yoga of action. Now, as I said, now he points to what he's talking about. This yoga of action purifies the man of meditation. Now, we need to go back to chapter 3. What does he say? You offer all your actions to me first in the confidence in my words without reservation, the confidence in my words that you are not the doer anyway. This is gunas attaching themselves to gunas. And so it is hard to renounce action without following the yoga of action. That is to say, offering and surrendering everything to the divine. Let's just talk about that. When you get up in the morning, before you start your day, offer the entire day to the divine. You can say words like these: this day and all it contains, actions, the fruits of those actions, my feelings, my thoughts, my perceptions, my projections, my memories, all this is offered to thee. It is thine, it is of thee. And then say your mantra for 12 times. Say Om Swaha. This takes seconds. But if you do it sincerely and you do it day in and day out, then when you take a cup of coffee or tea or juice, a glass of juice, you offer that. You offer that to the Lord, to the Devas. And so on, right through the day. Thing after thing after thing, action, action, action. And when you go to bed at night, you offer the night and all it contains. All it may contain. The sleep, the dreams, the dreamless sleep. And anything that may arise and the fruits of anything that may arise during the night. Offer all that. This is putting into practice what it is that Krishna describes in chapter 3. This is following the yoga of action. He describes what it is, so now we need to put it into practice. It is hard to renounce action, that is to say, detach yourself from the feeling that you are the doer and the legitimate receiver of the fruits and rewards of action. It is hard to renounce all that without following the yoga of action, which he describes in some detail in chapter 3. This yoga purifies the man of meditation. What does he mean? He means that when you do that, when you sincerely offer these things, then your mind becomes calmer. And so the meditation becomes more practical, more possible. This yoga purifies the man of meditation, bringing him soon to Brahman. Now, once again, notice Krishna's making a promise, bringing him soon. And he says in chapter 2, even a little practice of this yoga will free you from the terrible wheel of rebirth and death. So you can say that the rest of the Gita is, in a sense, an elaboration of what Krishna says at the very beginning in chapters 2 and 3. So it's so good to go back and study those 2 chapters until you have firmly in mind what he means by the yoga of action, what it means to offer everything to the divine and thereby renounce your doership in all of that. When the heart is made pure by that yoga, when the body obedient, when the heart is made pure by that yoga, when the body obedient, when the senses are mastered, when man knows that his Atman is the Atman in all creatures. In other words, you see the divine everywhere. This again is the testimony of the saints. This is what they see. When all of that happens, when all of that is the truth, then let him act untainted by action. And so then what happens, and it's again described in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, you become fluid. You simply move, the music moves you. The music of the universe's gunas moves you, and you don't even think about it. As Sri Ramakrishna says, you become like an expert dancer. You cannot put a foot wrong. This is what he means by let him act untainted by action. That which is happening and is appropriate simply moves that person, and they in the witness consciousness observe it, and they're perfectly untainted, that is unimprisoned, unbound by it. Now, here's one of these definitions of illumination that we just have in mind. The illumined soul whose heart is Brahman's heart. It's no longer your heart. As Chaitanya's prayer says, when my heart burns away with its desire for thee, desire for illumination. When my heart burns away with its desire, And the world without thee is a heartless void. That's what he means. The illumined soul, whose heart is Brahman's heart, thinks always, I am doing nothing. Can we internalize that? Can we assimilate that? I am doing nothing. The gunas are attaching themselves to gunas. I am witnessing it. No matter what he sees, hears, touches, smells, eats, no matter whether he is moving, sleeping, breathing. Now, here Krishna goes into one of these catalogs again, trying to give us the idea that he means everything. No matter what he sees, hears, touches, smells, eats, no matter whether he is moving, sleeping, breathing, speaking, excreting, or grasping. Or grasping something with his hand, or opening his eyes, or closing his eyes. This he knows always. I am not seeing. I am not hearing. It is the senses that see and hear and touch things of the senses. I, the witness, the dweller within the body, is not doing any of this. Now, it seems inconceivable. But Krishna says, and Swami Prabhavananda said, and Swami Swahananda said, and Swami Sarvadevananda said, and the other Swamis that we talked to in this order and from other traditions, they will tell us this is absolutely true. Now, he alludes back to chapter 3 here. He puts aside desire, offering the act to Brahman. Whatever it is, notice that long list that he gave us, trying to be comprehensive. He puts aside desire. When desire arises in the body, in the mind, as it inevitably will, he simply sets it aside, offering that to Brahman. The lotus leaf rests unwetted on water. He rests on action, untouched by action. To the follower of the yoga of action, the body and mind, the sense organs and the intellect are instruments only. To the follower of the yoga of action, the body and mind, the sense organs and the intellect are instruments only, not his own instruments. They belong to the divine, and everything that is of them and comes through them is offered to the divine. He knows himself other than the instrument, and thus his heart grows pure. Notice again, he gestures toward process here. We bear this firmly in mind, and the heart grows pure. United with Brahman, cut free from the fruit of the act. No more karma. United with Brahman, cut free from the fruit of the act, a man finds peace in the work of the Spirit. the activities of the Atman, of the witness. Without Brahman, man is a prisoner, enslaved by action, dragged onward by desire. Does that sound familiar? Certainly does sound familiar from here. Dragged onward by desire. Happy is that dweller in the city of 9 gates, that's the body, whose discrimination has cut him free from his act. He is not involved in action. He does not involve others. Think about that. He doesn't try to entangle others. Do not say, God gave us this delusion. You dream, you, the divine being, he's now talking to that which is gestured to by Tattvamasi. That, thou art that. Do not say God gave us this delusion. You dream you are the doer. You dream that action is, you dream that action is done. You dream that action bears fruit. It is your ignorance, you, the divine being, self-forgetting. It is your ignorance. It is the world's delusion that gives you these dreams. What does he mean by the world's delusion? In the Upanishads it says, the cosmic mind said, I am one, I shall become many. From a discriminative point of view, nothing ever happened. Nothing can happen to that which is Brahman, that cosmic mind. Nothing can happen. The dream began. The dream is convincing and compelling because it is Brahman's dream. Brahman becomes self-forgetting. You are Brahman. You are self-forgetting. And so you think, I am this, I am doing that. This is what Krishna is telling us. You dream that action. You dream it bears fruit. It is your ignorance. It is the world's delusion, jagat by this. It is the universe's delusion, the world's delusion, that gives you these dreams, which are called Mahamaya. Does that mean that they're not real? No, Sri Ramakrishna says that's not what it means at all. It's simply Brahman in action. Shakti. Brahman, water, that is the divine being, is symbolized as water. Water still is Brahman. Water in waves, water moving, is Shakti. One and the same. But it is to be that which is in motion is to be observed, not attached to. How are we doing for time? Okay, it's 8:50. This gives us some time for discussion. And I'll just, These lines again, this is the testimony of saint after saint after saint. The Lord is everywhere and always perfect. I'll just leave it at that. It is the world's delusion that gives you this dream, these dreams. The Lord is everywhere and always perfect. So before we go on, which we'll do next week, let's take some time together and explore what's been said here. And what does this give rise to you in you? What are your questions? What are your comments?
The illumined soul, whose heart is Brahman's heart, thinks always, I am doing nothing. And then it goes on to he sees, he hears, he touches, he smells. And he's not doing any of those things. Is that in line with what you'd said earlier about offering everything up to the divine, like in the morning? You said some sort of
that's how you start. That's how you start this process of renunciation. You actively offer it. You say, it isn't mine. You tell me it's mine, not mine, Lord. Okay, here, I offer it to you. It still seems like it's mine, but I'm offering it to you. Ultimately, what comes is you see, indeed, because of the purification of that action, because of the purification of your mind and heart, you see, oh, I really am not doing it. So the yoga, the workbook that Krishna gives us in chapter 3 is, start by doing this. Start by offering everything to me until it becomes habitual in your mind. And therefore your heart becomes pure. So read that again. That was very good, Brahmadas, what you pointed to. His heart is Brahman's heart. He smells, hears, and all that.
The illumined soul, whose heart is Brahman's heart, thinks always, I am doing nothing, no matter what he sees, hears, touches, smells, eats.
Exactly, and then it goes on and on.
Yeah.
Trying to be comprehensive and give us a sense of, I mean, by Krishna's trying to give the sense, by this I mean everything. Everything that happens to this action and experience suit.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. You pointed right to the verse that says it bang on. One whose heart is Brahman's heart. He who knows Brahman becomes Brahman. Anyone else? Just speak out. I can't tell if you want to. You don't raise your hand because I can't see it. Just say it.
Okay, Brother Shankara, it is Swayam again.
Yes, Swayam.
If I'm content taking care of my personal and household needs and then spending time doing my spiritual practices or reading, listening, the Shravana, Manana Nidhyasana to understand all this better and have no interest in seeking work outside, does that mean in any way I'm shirking part of the karma yoga?
No. No, it means you come to that stage of your life that's called, I had the word and it slipped away. The retirement, the word for retirement in the third stage of life.
Vanaprastha.
Vanaprastha, right. Vanaprastha. You've come to that Vanaprastha stage of your life. Well and good. You're not shirking anything. You're looking to attain that freedom that will allow you to go into the fourth stage of your life and attain moksha, so that there's nothing to hold you back. And Sri Krishna says, if you're sincere and you work at this, it will happen soon. Why? Because he gets behind it. We are not what we think we are. We are not the doer. We're not the action figure. And we're not meat puppets either. We are the divine presence in an action and experience suit of our own choice. And it is a dream that it is so, as Krishna has just pointed out. It is the world's delusion that gives you these dreams. So no, you're not shirking anything. Now, someone younger, if they wanted to remove themselves from the world of action, they have some choices. They can become independent of the system and try to live apart from the system of earning and consuming, or they can become a monastic. You know, we don't have to be part of the system. And we're not shirking if we don't. Although the system will tell you, the heart attack machine, as the singer called it, I think Bob Dylan, I don't remember who. The heart attack machine, yeah, it was Dylan, said that's what it'll tell you, that you have to, you know, be part of the system. No, you don't. You can make your own way. You can be independent. And find a way to make your living apart from the system and just gain what you need to live in a sane and sensible way and not be part of the system. And pursue the spiritual. And it's so gratifying. Thank you, Swayam. Yeah, you're not shirking.
Thank you.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
this is, I'm just commenting on Swayam's. If she did everything and then not expecting anything in return, that is part of karma yoga, isn't it?
Well, yes.
You're not expecting anything in return. You are unselfishly doing it. And just offering is all divine's doing. And wouldn't that be part of
Absolutely.
karma yoga?
That selflessness
Selflessness.
is at the heart of karma yoga.
Exactly.
It's what Swami Vivekananda said. Selfishness is not religion.
Right.
Selflessness is religion.
Yes. Just like what she's doing and not expecting anything in return and just continue to do the right thing and then leave it as it is. Whatever happens, it happens. So that is part of karma yoga. Okay, just wanted to clarify with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Haima.
Thank you
Exactly.
so much.
Right.
And also the calmer and the fluid way of doing it, unless we practice what St. Francis of Assisi says, where there is hatred, let me so love.
Yes.
That would take you to the fluid, calmer stage of our lives.
Yes,
I
indeed.
think that would lead us to that path. Definitely would lead us.
Francis is one of those saints that I've been alluding to when I say
Exactly.
the testimony of the saints.
Yes, he is. He is definitely an embodiment of divine power.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Haima.
Uh-huh.
Anybody else? Please.
Brother Shankara, what if we
Yes.
have hatred for like things that are not necessarily people, but like concepts such as like inequality or injustice? Is that?
That's not hatred. That's righteous indignation. You want to, your compassion makes you want to make things better for those who suffer. Don't hate them. That does you. It doesn't. Hatred has no effect on the thing that you hate, and it has a bad effect on you. So don't hate them. Simply be righteously indignant. Let your compassion make you righteously indignant, and let that empower you to some sort of action, whatever is in your capacity to do. If you have a little money to give money. If you have some time to give time. If you sign a petition, participate in a march. You're young, you have lots of energy, so find ways to materially contribute toward the things that, nothing will happen unless we make it happen. And by saying that, it is the divine itself that gives you that indignation. It is the divine itself that is sensing the imbalance and impelling you to action. But no hatred. Good question. Do not give way to hatred. That's what leads Anakin to become Darth Vader. Anybody else? Wonderful. This is good. Let's keep it going.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
How does one know when the senses are mastered?
When some restlessness of the mind presents itself to you, and with relative ease, you can recognize the restlessness of the mind and the desire to get some satisfaction, that moment of bliss from satisfying that desire. And you can easily say, I don't think so. And it doesn't come overnight. And there will be many a slip between the cup and the lip, as the poet said. But just keep at it until, and the way to do it is to practice meditation, because we find that source of bliss inside us that our mind, our senses are reaching out toward when they become restless and try to reach for some desire. We say, oh no, the bliss is the bliss. I know that bliss. I know where the source of that bliss is. It's here. Does that mean you never have another ice cream cone? No, it does not mean you don't have another ice cream cone or a nice dinner or a drive through the country or whatever it is that, but you just recognize it for what it is. And so that's mastery of the senses. And you gain mastery of the senses because you understand what it is that the senses are reaching toward and where it truly resides.
I heard in a lecture that even Swami Vivekananda enjoyed ice cream. Oh
yes, he loved chocolate ice cream. But the thing about Swami Vivekananda is, this is the story about Swami Vivekananda and chocolate ice cream. He was staying at Ridgely, this manor in mid-Hudson Valley, New York. And he had the habit of excusing himself as soon as he'd finished eating. And he was with the Leggett family. And so he had excused himself and was at the archway out of the dining room. You can stand on the spot where he was when this happened. And the dining table is still the dining table at which they used to eat. He was walking out of the room and Mrs. Leggett, the hostess, said, "Oh, Swamiji, we have chocolate ice cream for dessert." And it's said that he did an about face with military precision, and headed back to his chair. Now, the difference between Swami Vivekananda and the rest of us, I'm saying this not being terribly generous to everyone, but Swami Vivekananda, if chocolate ice cream had utterly disappeared from the universe, he wouldn't have given it a second thought, though he liked it. It would have just been another thing that happened. So yes, Vivekananda liked ice cream. So did Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna enjoyed his sweets and his betel nuts and this and that. When Holy Mother was in her last days and was ill, she was told that she was very fond of chilies, hot chilies, and she was told she couldn't have any. And when she finally passed away from the body and they were taking apart her bed, they found underneath her mattress a little package of chilies. So does that mean that Mother was a prisoner of chilies? No. She liked chilies. Good question. Anyone else?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
So in Swami Vivekananda's complete works, the last portion of the Karma Yoga section, to summarize, I think, if I understand correctly, he says that the main goal of Karma Yoga is freedom from bondage.
Mm-hmm.
And towards that, he talks about happiness and misery and life and death. And so the only way to not have misery is not to seek happiness. And the only way to get beyond death is to give up the love of life. Can you explain how we can incorporate that in this current time of coronavirus, where we are all sheltering in place and not wanting to go outside because of, I guess, fear of catching the disease or getting sick? Or how do we put that in its perspective?
As Holy Mother said, as she was coming to the end of her life, somebody asked her, "Are you looking forward to leaving the body?" And she said, "Who yearns for death? Who yearns for death?" To emphasize and to take every precaution and to be neurotic about guarding our life and so on. And we know people like this. This is a way to create misery. But who yearns for death? No. Why would we want to put ourselves in the way of a painful death by contracting the coronavirus? No. We protect ourselves and others by sheltering in place and trying not to overload the medical system by getting sick. Again, we find that our lust for life diminishes in proportion to our knowledge of what life truly is and our decreased fear of death. When we know that we are immortal, then there's no reason to cling to this particular action and experience suit. But as Mother said, who yearns for death? No, we don't. You don't need to court death. Does that answer your question, or is there something?
That's sort of what I thought, but it was good clarification.
Well, I'm glad that's what you thought, because you're maturely looking at these things.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Yes, yes. Anyone else? All right then. I think it's after 9. My goodness, it's 9:10, yeah. Okay, well, as always, this is wonderful discussion. This is the way we should do this, as doing this together, studying the art of spirituality together. Satoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya Abir Moiti. Oh, dearly beloved, lead us from thy lesser truth to thy highest truth. Lead us from darkness and ignorance to the brilliance of thy wisdom and love. Lead us from death to immortality. Light us through and through, light us through and through with thy everlasting shining presence. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. So,
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
thank you, dear ones.
Thank
So
you.
glad you came. Any last thoughts or comments from anyone? This Sunday's talk will be on Sri Krishna's Karma Yoga, Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 3. And so we'll just amplify what we've been studying here. But May starts a month for the study of Karma Yoga, so that's what.
Is Saturday going to be realizing God?
Yes, Saturday's realizing God. I don't know what chapter I always select the talk or the chapter that we're going to read just before to see, just to make it as apropos to what's going on as possible. But thank you for reminding me, reminding us.
I just want to make one comment. Meditation definitely brings new awareness about our own selves and about the whole universe. Yes. I realized after doing so many years of meditation.
Well, as a very clever young man who writes for the New York Times said, and he comes from the IT background. Mm-hmm. He said, meditation. He said, what it does, what it is, and what happens. He says it's like a software update for the mind.
It sure is. That's a good way to put it.
I thought so too. That's why it became.
Yeah. Yes. You touch your core. Exactly. We touch our cores. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. I'm going to hit the button to end the meeting then. Bless you all. Good night, dears.
Good night.
See you.
Good night.